How to be a more strategic thinker. I'm talking all about strategic thinking. Maybe you understand the benefits, maybe you don't. I believe that there's so much more out there than just to hustle and just be smart. It's about strategy. If you got the right strategy, you can progress much faster than somebody who just hustles or somebody who's just smart. And a strategy you can learn, you can teach it, but the other person has to understand that you're the one who knows the strategy and you understand the fundamentals. So he trusts you and he's doing them. Also, if you're listening to somebody who explains to you, you gotta understand whether the person can guide you through that and you can believe him or not. But I believe it's kind of easy to distinguish whether the person kind of understands it or not. Watch all of my other videos where I talk about strategic things. That's where you can hear about understanding whether somebody thinks strategically or whether somebody wants to sell you something. The solution always sounds strategic. It's never an extreme. But in this video I want to talk about how you can become more strategic thinker. One of the first rules of strategic thinking is that you should not improvise and you should not go to the gym and keep thinking about the problem. There's a certain way how you can handle being strategic, and it's about certain steps that you do. The first step is to write down the problem, because even you could be the smartest person, you could be as smart as Albert Einstein, but if you don't focus too much on a problem, you will just glide to any other thought that pops up and you will forget what you think. So write down the exact question that you have. And sometimes that even helps you to think about, okay, what's actually the question that I want to solve? Write it down so you can always come back to the main question. And then, depending on information, you gotta write down the processes that you want to do. And then, so you can actually reread them later on. Whenever you do a decision, you can see, okay, that's how I thought. Maybe this thought pattern was stupid, so next time I'll not repeat it. You kind of start to analyze yourself where your breaking points are, and you're gonna get better in this. So it's super important that you get into the habit of writing things down. This habit is also beneficial for other facts, like if you have to analyze yourself, if you have to give yourself feedback, if you do dream journaling, if you just journal. It's one of the most useful things. It's one of the most important skills. And I believe that's literally more important than all the habits, skills that you're learning from those other YouTube videos with cold showering and all of that. Journaling is super important because that's the only way how you will remember yourself. Your mind is biased. You will always remember things differently than they were. Sometimes you have events where you thought, okay, like this person wasn't actually so bad. It's because your mind told you that. Or you have accomplished a bunch of things, but you don't really appreciate them because you thought like, that was easy. Could have done that easily. So write things down, write your emotions down, write your thought process down, so you remember how you did the decision. Then the next step is to actually pick a time in a day where you're just gonna sit and just think, because that's actually creative time, and it shouldn't be regarded as something that you just do occasionally. No, there's certain time of the day where you're just gonna sit and think strategically. Write down all the problems that you have. Think about which ones you want to consider, which ones you want to play. And I like to use that time maybe in the morning or in the middle of the day, because after you thought about them, you will still keep those thoughts in your head after you're gonna do something. So sometimes you just keep playing with your phone, you go to the gym, you meet somebody, but you keep thinking about the things that you thought about before. So this time maybe actually helps you to remember the decisions that you do, or keep thinking if another thought comes up. If you do this at the end of the day, you keep rethinking, basically you get insomnia. So you want to do that, I would say, after the deep focus task, or if the deep focus tasks are at the end of the day. Doesn't really matter if you do it at the start of the day or if you do it in the middle of the day. If you watched one of my dopamine videos, you get dopamine whenever you do a decision and whenever you reward yourself. So if you solve a problem, actually, that will give you dopamine. So it's not just an overthinking kind of state. Overthinking happens when you think about the problem, but you can't come up with a solution. So you blame yourself and then you get into a negative spiral. If you see something like this happening to you, you don't find any solution whatsoever, then tell you it's okay. It can happen. Sometimes you don't find a solution. You thought at least about a different pattern. Try to think whether you thought in the same direction or not. I've done also some videos where I explain different questions that you can ask yourself, and depending on the question, there's always a certain question that you can ask yourself to think in a different way. So go through all of them to not repeat the same thought pattern. Then if you do a decision, you want to consider whether it is short term, whether it's long term. But that goes into my strategic questions that I ask myself. Doesn't matter which decision I have to do. The thing that you want to consider when you want to be a more strategic thinker is in which kind of mood you are currently. You want to observe that. If you're in a negative mood, you will probably not likely do decisions. You'll probably question yourself whether you do the right things. Sometimes it's good to question yourself, especially if you've done already a decision and now you're rethinking whether it was the right decision or not. And you want to establish that into a routine, because if you don't, basically you don't allow yourself the time to actually think negatively, and then it will happen just during the day that you just feel negative. That goes with the same things. If somebody dies in your family and you don't give yourself the time to grieve, it will just hit you at one point and then you're just gonna think about it. So it's super important for your psychology that you actually pick a time. You can always say you're gonna do it later, but you have to do it at one point. You cannot keep running away from certain things. And in business, you gotta do decisions. You gotta think strategically. So every time there's a decision to make, write it down. Remember that you wanna think about it one time. So your brain is kind of relaxed. Your brain knows, okay, you're gonna come back to this problem and you're actually gonna solve it at one point. If you're having a particular happy day, very positive, you can do a bunch of decisions. So maybe on this day, you wanna have more time onto strategic thinking, and you want to improve it. You want to improve the way you do decisions, and you want to do a bunch of decisions on this particular day. Also consider the location where you do a strategic decision. What helps a lot is to be in completely different environment. That's what creative people know. Like everybody who's doing anything creative, they know that location change is super important. If you're one of those nerds sitting at home the whole time, you're not gonna do any good strategic decision. Go out in a cafe. Do a trip to a different city for the whole day. Maybe even consider taking some medicine to be in a different kind of state of mind. What I did found so useful is to do any strategic decision while you're doing something relaxing. If you go to a spa, if you do a massage, actually the main point to do a massage is to be in a meditative state and not to think about something, because otherwise it puts you in the pressure. And again, doing strategic decisions without a pen and paper or your phone is kind of useless, because you keep questioning yourself the whole time. You keep wondering, your mind is just going nowhere. You can't do any decision. We are not made for that. We are made for thinking what is the problem right now, and then when we have the solution, we're gonna act directly. But since most of the problems in business are kind of very forward looking, we cannot apply them directly. So we keep questioning ourselves and we can't move forward. If there's some strategic decision to make, write them down on a list, and whenever you're meeting with some of your high value friends, ask them. Maybe you'll forget about it, so it's important that you actually write all of them down so you can consider them. Usually it's kind of not okay to write your high value friends just a random question that you have, only if it's super important. But if you're meeting with them and you hang out, you can ask 5-10 questions. I mean, you're hanging out anyways, right? So depending on the circumstance and when you do something, you should keep those questions for the right moment. But when it's happening, then you're not spontaneous, but you're actually prepared. The other person doesn't know that you're prepared. Maybe it's actually just on your mind currently. But if they are written down, you will not forget about any of those questions. Also, see how the other person reacts. If you ask a question and the other person gives you this look, then the question is just weird, and there's a reason why the person thinks the question is weird. Maybe it's the wrong question to ask. Maybe you should keep asking different questions, and that's also how you get feedback, so you keep improving your strategic thinking. Read books, read especially autobiographies, so you can see how other people think. Watch my YouTube videos, so you keep learning how I'm thinking. For now, those are the main concepts of becoming a more strategic thinker. If you like those concepts, I make you smile, think about subscribing to the channel, hitting the bell button super hard, so more strategic things are happening in your life. Like the video, and I'm gonna see you on the next video. Cheers.